The extent of its love affair with the princess. This was the scene at the US Open tennis in New York, but remembrance and mourning has been nationwide.
We share our grief.
Canadians too have been paying their respects. A minute's silence was observed at this baseball game in Toronto. Washington was Princess Diana's favourite American city, and its citizens have been queuing patiently at the British Embassy to register their condolences. The princess was last here in June. She was a frequent visitor to the United States. Its people adored her. They saw star quality and humanity.
I think the whole world is in a state of shock and grief. And I know what it's like to be chased in a car by the paparazzi. And it's one of the most frightening, claustrophobic-making feelings in the world, because you have no place to go. You're in a car, you're going faster and faster to try and get away from them. They can shoot through darkened windows, and you end up in a corner of the car. And she must have known such fear. It makes me so angry. I know how awful it's going to be for her children. She was such a wonderful mother. And she would have been a great supportive. I'm sorry, I can't talk. I just feel so sorry for the whole family, but especially her little boys.
During her early visits, Princess Diana was like a film star. Before Diana, royals had seemed aloof, even stodgy to Americans. Now, here was a lady with grace and style, yet also a great sense of fun. Famously, she once danced with John Travolta at the White House.
We danced for it seemed about 10 minutes every song that, from one of, some of the old movies that I'd done, and the floor cleared, and it was kind of like a fairy tale.
After Diana's marriage breakdown, the Americans seemed to warm to her even more. People of position and influence wanted to be photographed with her. The good causes that Diana sponsored all did well. Her popularity gave her power here.
She was a very genuine, caring person who desperately wanted to make a difference to the world.
She brought hope to people, and the fact that she was so candid and willing to talk forthrightly about her own problems, I think was an inspiration to others.
News coverage of her death has been coast to coast.
Tonight, 60 Minutes devotes its entire broadcast to the life and death.
Shock and mourning for the death of a princess.
The American news networks have been reporting nothing else. Such was this nation's love affair with Diana.
She was really friendly and kind, and she really touched everyone.
I grew up with Princess Diana. I watched her get married, I watched her have 2 beautiful children, and I felt like I grew up with her.
The people of the United States took Princess Diana into their hearts. She had an appeal for all generations. America's fascination and love is unlikely to wane with her passing. John Irvine, ITN, Washington.
John, you've told us about why she was popular in America. Tell us a bit more about what it was about Princess Diana that appealed across the country.
I think she had a great mixture of qualities that appealed to the Americans. She was, of course, beautiful, statuesque, elegant and graceful. She was regal, but never distant. She had that common touch, the ability to relate to the common man. I think the Americans also recognized in her a person who had had a difficult journey through life, a person who had endured some sadness, but as they say here, a person who had come through. In life, Diana was idolized. I think it's fair to say that in death, she will become a legend, perhaps beyond even Grace Kelly or Marilyn Monroe.
And the newspapers there, are they reflecting that?
The newspapers and the broadcasters. When the story broke, it was the middle of the night here. All the main networks rescheduled their programs. They went to news. Yesterday, the news broadcasters here told no other story. It's unprecedented, I think, that an entire day's news should be dedicated to the death of a foreigner. Diana may have been a British princess, but she was America's Queen of Hearts.
Thank you, John. Not just in America, but around the world, millions have been expressing their grief over Diana's death. Statesmen, celebrities and ordinary people have been paying tribute to her. Among them, her close friend Imran Khan. He says she's left a legacy of service to the needy. Mark Austin reports.
In Pakistan today, cricketer turned politician Imran Khan spoke of his shock at the loss of a princess who earlier this year had answered his call for help.
Princess Diana for me was a friend who was a friend in need. When I needed her desperately earlier this year in May to help us with our cancer hospital, we were finding it very difficult to raise money. She just, on 2 weeks' notice, hopped on a plane, came, and her presence, of course, revived the hospital. But I'm just talking about not just the hospital point of view, which is just one aspect of it, but of course the fact that someone who was such a humanitarian, you know, her cause for the landmine victims, banning the landmines. I mean, it's just it's a loss all over the world.
A minute's silence today at a conference on landmines in Oslo. And from delegates there, a suggestion that in view of her campaigning work on the issue, any future global ban should be called the Princess Diana Treaty.
We shall spare no effort at this conference to achieve the goals she had set for herself.
King Hussein of Jordan signing a condolence book at the British Embassy in his country is among many world leaders paying tribute to Diana.
She was a unique person. And she had done so much for human causes everywhere. It will be a great loss for a long, long time to come.
Visiting a school in Moscow, President Yeltsin spoke of his affection for a woman who did much to help Russian charities. She was loved and is loved by the Russian people, he said. And in Hong Kong, Diana adorns the front of both English and Chinese newspapers. There's been a rush for books about her, and commemorative stamps issued in the 80s are quickly selling out despite suddenly soaring prices. The princess had been due to visit the former British colony later this month. Mark Austin, ITN.
The latest news on the investigation into Princess Diana's death is that sources close to it have just said that the speedometer in the car in which Princess Diana died was frozen at 121 miles an hour. 121 miles an hour. Away from that investigation and indeed all the reaction here and across the world, thoughts turn to Balmoral and the princess's sons, William and Harry. Before the accident, they had been due to return to London today to spend the last of their summer holidays with their mother. Diana had always said that her children were the most important part of her life. Harry Smith reports.
Last seen in public, driving to church at Balmoral yesterday, the princes were joined there last night by their father. As they come to terms with their loss, friends of the princess say they're concerned not just that they've lost a loving mother, but the manner in which she died and the effect that will have on her sons. Prince William in particular has in recent years grown increasingly to dislike the constant media attention which goes with being the heir to the throne. These pictures, taken with his younger brother Harry at Balmoral 2 weeks ago, were from one of the few occasions recently when he's willingly put himself in front of the cameras. Diana spoke of her determination to bring up her sons in her own way when she announced that she was bowing out of public life.
My first priority will continue to be our children, William and Harry, who deserve as much love and care and attention as I am able to give, as well as an appreciation of the tradition into which they were born.
But the princess also broke with tradition. She took her sons to amusement parks and burger bars in order to keep them in touch with the world outside the monarchy. Now the two teenage princes must face one of the most difficult stages of growing up without their loving mother. Harry Smith, ITN.
And our reporter David Rose is at Balmoral now. David, does it look as if the princes are going to stay up there for the time being?
Yes, John, I think it's looking more and more likely that the Queen and Prince Charles have decided that this remote Scottish estate is the best place, if it can be a good place, for the two young princes to spend the long days this week before their mother's funeral. Balmoral is, after all, by far the most private of all the royal homes, unless the royal family want to be seen as yesterday, or prepared to be seen as yesterday when they went half-mile up this drive to Crathy Church. There's no way they can be spied on or filmed. I think there is, too, the point that there's a lot of room here for the princes to be alone or together, walking beside the River Dee, walking in the hills, or with their grandmother or their father.
Are there any signs of any member of the royal family leaving there, David, or are they all staying?
Well, there's no sign of intense police and special branch activity as there was yesterday, so I don't think any major movement is imminent, though rumours persist that Prince Andrew may well leave. There is, too, the fact that Prince William and Prince Harry were due to fly south today to meet their mother as she returned from her French holiday.
Thank you, David. In contrast to plans for the huge public occasion of the Princess's funeral, her companion, Dodi Fayed, was buried quietly last night in Surrey. Tonight, his father released this statement: "I will never be able to reconcile myself to the needless and cruel deaths of two people who were so vibrant, generous and full of life. God took their souls to live together in paradise. Now they have peace." Andrew Simmons reports.
Beyond the gates of this cemetery in the Surrey countryside, Dodi Al-Fayed is at rest. His grave out of view in the privacy his family had requested. The people here at the entrance didn't know him, but they came to lay flowers. The funeral cortege had left the London Central Mosque last night on its way to the cemetery in Woking for a strictly private burial. With his eldest son and heir on this final journey was Mohammed Al-Fayed. His spokesman said Mr. Al-Fayed's heart is in Britain. It was only fitting his eldest son and heir should be buried here. On his orders, Harrods, the pride of the Al-Fayed empire, was blacked out last night, its world-famous illuminations switched off. A single floodlight was beneath the Union flag at half-mast, and throughout the night people were still paying their respects. Today, a section of pavement had become another shrine in the wake of this tragedy. Harrods has reopened, but many of its first visitors weren't here to shop, but to pay their respects. The staff, wearing black, had been told it was Mr. Al-Fayed's express wish that life and business had to go on, although the Harrods' main entrance, blocked by flowers, will remain shut. Many of the tributes are in sealed envelopes addressed to the Al-Fayed family to be read in private. And in contrast to the vast amount of flowers outside the royal palaces, most of the open tributes are addressed to Diana and Dodi as a couple, some from intimate friends, many from passers-by. Thoughtful messages, some in Arabic, conveyed such affection for Diana, Princess of Wales, and Dodi Al-Fayed. Only days before his death, Dodi had hinted that he had fallen in love with the princess.
And he turned to me, and he never raised his voice, never. And he looked at me and he said, "Michael, there will never, ever be another girlfriend from me, never." And he said it in such a way that I knew he was utterly sincere. All he wanted was her happiness, and she knew that. And one person I've spoken to, who she trusted absolutely, told me that she made it very, very clear that for her, she was very much in love.
Harrods has opened a book of condolence. All day, people have queued in a dignified fashion before adding their words. The resounding theme here is heartfelt sorrow at the loss of a couple only a short time after they found happiness together. Andrew Simmons, ITN, Knightsbridge.
A quick look now at some of the day's other news. A security guard was today jailed for 7.5 years for the manslaughter of the